Hey guys, what's up? It's Simmel here. I know it's been a while since I last posted a video, but life has kind of gotten in the way of everything for me, and it's a bit difficult to try and keep up, but I'm doing my best, so thank you very much for bearing with me. So, I've been home from BronyCon for a while now, and I've had a bit of time to digest the whole weekend. As always, it was a fantastic time. I absolutely love that con for everything that it is. But what I'm here to talk about specifically today is the announcement that was made at closing ceremonies. I'm sure you know the one. It was the announcement that BronyCon 2019 would be the last BronyCon. This came as a shock to a lot of people, and obviously from the look of things it's also kind of raised some concerns about the state of the fandom as a whole. So I just wanted to kind of give my take on all of that. For a bit of background, if you don't already know me, as I said, my name is Simmel, and I'm actually BronyCon staff, and I have an interesting job on staff. I'm actually the official mascot actor for Hoofbeats. Don't believe me? I can prove it. These are my official Hoofbeats headphones. These are actually the first year I ever got to use them. These were made by my friend Bravery. Thank you again, Bravery. And there's only 2 of these in the world. One went to me, one went to the charity auction. How can I prove that these are the mascot's headphones and not ones from the charity auction? Because there's no way that I could afford the $345 price that the other pair went for. I do not have that much money. Anyway, BronyCon 2018 was my 4th year back as Hoofbeats, and you know, it's a fun job, it's a really important job.
Yeah, black shirts! I love black shirts so much!
And I had a lot of fun doing it this year as well. Now here's the thing, they didn't actually tell us mascots, there's 3 of us, they didn't actually tell us that next year would be the last con until maybe an hour and a half before closing ceremonies. I was in the middle of the charity auction, and another staffer, a friend of mine, came down to fetch me to bring me up to a room upstairs where the convention chair was, along with a few other executive staff, to sort of break the news to us as mascots. So I didn't even really find out about this until a little bit before the rest of you guys found out, but I'm kind of glad about that because it would have been really tough to have to deal with that information for the entirety of the weekend. So I'm glad they kind of waited to tell us. That being said, the news didn't really come as much of a surprise to me. I'll get more into that later. But anyway, what happened is they broke the news to us mascots, and we had to get ready to give some sort of skit, some sort of performance during closing ceremonies. So we start getting that sorted out. I head back down to the charity auction, and the first thing that happens when I get back down there, Josh Dean, who's a previous convention chair, and he's also the president of Lunar Solace, which is the parent nonprofit company that runs BronyCon. He kind of saw me, and I was looking a little down, and obviously he knows the news already, and he's just like, do you want a hug? So we hugged it out in the backstage, charity auction ended, got into closing ceremonies, and right before closing ceremonies, in that back access hallway kind of behind the main stage, a bunch of staff just kind of had a little powwow together, a meeting, joining hands in a circle to kind of talk about it. Because here's the thing, this was really weighing on the staff as well. It's upsetting not only to attendees but to a lot of the staff. We pulled it together, we started closing ceremonies, the mascots did our little skit. The skit involved all 3 mascots, and the plot is kind of that they're all together, but Hoofbeats and Blank Canvas both have their own big opportunity basically coming up in the next year. I get a letter that I get to open for a musical act, and Blank Canvas gets into a prestigious art school, and Main Event is just kind of left wondering, well, what about us? What's gonna happen? That skit ends, and then they made the announcement.
BronyCon 2019 will take place August 1st through the 4th, right here at the beautiful Baltimore Convention Center. You heard right. It's going to be a 4-day event, Thursday through Sunday. But there's a reason we're throwing the party of a lifetime next year. As the curtains close on this chapter of BronyCon, we're also choosing to end the event next year. BronyCon started small, and it grew into something bigger than any of us could ever have imagined.
So obviously, big reaction from the audience there, and the reaction from the crowd is kind of what you would expect. There's a lot of disappointment. And believe me, that sadness that we saw in the audience, it did not end with the audience. It was backstage as well. There was a lot of crying, a lot of hugging. It was very emotional backstage during those ceremonies. And so, you know, I'd been crying a bit and hugging people, and then all the mascots had to go and take pictures with people, which is something I love to do, but it's like, man, right after I've been crying, my eyes are all red and puffed up. This is going to be great for photos. But you know, we met with the fans, and it really struck me how many people came up just to sort of thank us and talk about what the con meant to them. You know, it was a really real experience for everybody involved. So, in the aftermath, there has also been a lot of speculation about why the con is choosing to end in 2019. Sheva Goldberg, who was the chair for BronyCon this year, actually did an AMA on Reddit, which I will link to in the description, that kind of goes to help answer some of the questions that people had about why the con is closing. Funny side note, one of the questions was asking if she would ever be a guest at BronyCon West. BronyCon West actually being sort of a fun name given to a house party that was thrown by some of my friends back here in the Seattle area during the weekend of BronyCon. So, it's a valid question. Why is BronyCon ending? Well, there's a few reasons. I mentioned before that it didn't really come as a surprise to me that the con was ending. Like I said, the mascots were not told until right before closing ceremonies, but there had always been a few things that made me wonder how much longer the con would last. First, the con had been declining in attendance. At its peak in 2015, we had 10,011 people, and over the past several years, we've dropped down, and now we're only a little bit over 5,000. And while a con of 5,000 is still not a tiny event, there's plenty of pony conventions that are smaller than that. Because of how big BronyCon had actually become, there was some reluctance to downsize it. Everyone expects it to be this big, huge pony event every year, and downsizing the event can kind of take away some of the magic. Lower attendance also means less revenue, so less money can be put into the next year of con. And also, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is ending soon. We know this for a fact at this point. If you read through Sheva's AMA on Reddit, you'll see more details as to why exactly the con is closing. Several of the things that I mentioned do go into it, but it's still not the complete picture. I encourage you to read that Reddit thread if you want the full story. So with the con ending next year, a lot of people are wondering, is this the end of the fandom? And to that I say, are you crazy? You think just because one con is gone that all of this is going to disappear? This fandom is so much larger than just BronyCon. And while BronyCon has been a catalyst to bring much of the fandom together, it has not been the only catalyst. It was not the first, and it won't be the last. Besides, there are plenty of other pony conventions out there. I'd encourage all of you to check out Everfree Northwest here in my hometown of Seattle. That said, BronyCon was and is really important to a lot of people. Every year that I've gone there, I'm blown away by the stories that I hear people tell about how coming to this convention really helped them get out of their shell and open up to people and make new friends. And that's really what the show is about. But that doesn't mean that has to end. Even though the show itself is ending, this fandom will always be around in some form. It might not be as active as it always has been. I think we've definitely seen some decline, but at the same time, there are still more and more new people breaking into the community. Questions about the fandom dying were also brought up during the Brony history panel that I did with Chocolate Pony. I'll give you guys a link to that video as well if you'd like to watch it. And I'll kind of reiterate a bit of what I said there. Aside from cons closing, one indicator that people seem to look at for a sign that the fandom is in decline is that they don't necessarily see the same amount of content as they did before. But I actually think that's kind of an illusion. Whenever I hear someone say that, oh, the fandom is dying, there's not all these cool fan projects that there were before, it's all going away, I'd say, alright, you sound like you've been in the fandom for a while. Why don't you go find someone who joined the fandom a year ago or a few months ago what they think? They'll probably have a really different answer. Because here's the thing, maybe it's not necessarily that you're seeing less content, it's just that you have a specific kind of nostalgia for the content that came out earlier in the fandom. Using myself as an example, I was actually 15 years old when MLP first aired on TV, and it's still crazy for me to think about that, but what that basically means is that I entered this fandom at the same time that I was entering adulthood. And I'm sure the same can be said for a lot of you watching. Because of that juxtaposition of where I am in my life and this fandom coming up, there's a natural inclination for me to put a lot of weight on the memories I have from the early days of the fandom. So when I look back at some of the older fan works that everybody knows from, 2012, 2013, 2014, not all of that is just a nostalgia for those specific fan works, but it's a nostalgia for my childhood. I value those years not just because of the fandom itself, but also because they were pivotal years in my own life. And when I think about it that way, it makes me realize that this fandom is never going to end. Will it decline? Yes, absolutely, as all fandoms eventually do. But that doesn't mean it's going to go away completely. I mean, I'm still here. You guys are still here. And even more important than that, while the show may end, while these conventions may eventually come to a complete end, what lasts the longest is the friendships that have been forged by this community. I've met so many friends through this fandom that I know are going to be with me for life. And in that regard, even though the show will come to an end, it succeeded in its mission. Its legacy lasts in the bonds that we have made through the community. Because that's really the point of the show, isn't it? Friendship really is magic, and that's a magic that is not going away anytime soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.